Hey, Taco Tuesday fans, this is Christian Brindle.
And I am Glenn Shelton.
We came together and combined our forces to create something special for insurance agents called Taco Tuesday. Let's taco about insurance. My company, Christian Brindle Insurance Services,
and my company, Lead Heroes,
is here to bring you the latest and greatest news happening in the insurance industry today and eat some tacos while we do it.
If you enjoy the content that we put out on this podcast, feel free to leave us a review or subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes.
Without further ado, let's get into this episode of Taco Tuesday.
So hungry. We're live.
What's up, Taco Tuesday Army? Welcome back to another edition of Taco Tuesday. Let's taco about insurance. We're live. We're back. We were off a couple weeks, and we're back here. And Glenn shows no mercy when it comes to the hot sauce.
That's right. I have several options here. Diablos, if any of you have ever really watched this show or listened to the podcast, you know that it's all about the Diablo sauce for me. Eric Fier, I can never say Eric's last name.
Eric Fierro.
Eric Fierro. I was gonna, you know what I was thinking is I was thinking of the chef guy. What's his last name? Fieri?
I don't know. I don't even know.
It's similar. I'm sorry, Eric, if you ever listen or watch this. I'm sorry, I just botched your last name. I wonder if this is hot enough for Eric. Eric, friend of Taco Tuesday podcast. He is a hot sauce aficionado. I wonder if Diablo sauce even dents it for him. You guys, welcome back to Taco Tuesday. Super excited to have Christian here. We have both been extremely busy with AEP, just like I'm sure most of you have been as well. And the goal here today is just to kind of give an update. Christian and I want to talk about a little bit of what we've seen, what we've heard, and, you know, get into the good, bad, and ugly and everything else, as we always do. So I have a cheese quesadilla with me today.
Woo!
Look at that. Are you kidding
I have this little rolled ball of cuteness with me today, so that's my taco for the day. Does that count?
You're going to eat your child? It's cannibalism.
Is that okay? She's clingy to daddy, so couldn't do anything about it. And usually I'm at the office, guys, when we do this. When we do Taco Tuesday and we go live, I'm almost always at the office and in the studio where I'm not disturbed, I'm not bothered. But today, I am not at the office and I'm home, so I gotta multitask my two careers: Taco Tuesday host and father to a grumpy toddler. I gotta balance these things out. So
that's right.
You know, that's just AEP 101
though. I'd love to hear we're a couple weeks in now.
Mm-hmm.
How many days?
20.
I guess we're not even technically a full 2 weeks yet.
Right. Yeah. Technically,
we're coming up on 2 weeks. So what are some of your early thoughts thus far?
Yeah, I think, obviously, I think for me, the biggest storyline of AEP so far has been the advertising and just the scramble for some of these advertisers to pivot right in the middle of AEP with the new CMS mandate that came down, right? Obviously, you and I talked on the phone about this a couple of weeks ago, and we were like, I don't see anything new that they hadn't said before in terms of what's allowed. I think what I got out of it more than anything was, yeah, this is the rules, and we're actually going to give a shit now about it. Sorry, don't say that. Yeah, don't repeat it after Daddy. But like, we're actually going to care now. We're actually going to care now about what's being said and what's being advertised, probably just due to the fact that there's been, I imagine, a huge amount of complaints, people calling in, trying to get $150 back in their Social Security. They get thrown onto some plan and all of a sudden they lose all their doctors, right? I mean, some of these centers last AEP, they were trying to move a bunch of my clients onto plans with no drug coverage, to MA only plans, to get like $40, $50 Part B givebacks. And
right.
And these were people that needed the drug coverage immensely. Like they didn't have veterans benefits, they didn't have TRICARE. These one lady in particular, and I've talked about it often, was she takes 3 separate insulins, all 3 of which, if you combine the retail value together, would be about $1,100 a month, something like that, maybe more. And so she almost changed to a plan with a $50 Part B give back, but no drug coverage. They didn't tell her it didn't have drug coverage. They told her she'd have like 100% coverage on her insulin. So I feel like it's been a problem for a while in terms of the advertising not following the rules. But I don't want to get myself in trouble by saying this, but
I'm sure CMS watches our show. So
or at the very least, there's people out there that will take snippets of clips of our show and edit
it. Look what Christian said. Edit.
But in all seriousness, though, to me, there's no way they didn't know this was going on. I just think they didn't care.
Yeah.
I just think that the outrage got to a point where they were forced to say something, take action,
right,
raise their hand. But it wouldn't surprise me in the slightest if some of these giant companies, have something in terms of I'll rub your back, you rub my back kind of thing with it. Because there's just no other logical reason why they got away with what they were getting away with running ads wise, as long as they did, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Are you talking about my comment with the regulatory capture, like I mentioned when you said the rub your back?
Absolutely. Yeah. I thought you hit it right on the head on that, because I was like, it's the only logical. I spent some time thinking about it after I read that too, and I was like, it's the only logical answer as to why this has been allowed. Because why are they just saying something about this now?
And this is, and I almost went back and edited. So to give you guys some context, if you're not sure what Christian's talking about. So this has come up quite a bit over the past couple of weeks, before AEP kicked off, since AEP's kicked off, but talking about a lot of the unethical marketing that's going on, and some really, really big companies that are doing a lot of unethical marketing, companies that make Christian and I look like, little ants on the grand scale of things. And the question kind of came up is how do these giant companies, without naming them, how do they get away with doing this when it's so obvious who it is? All you have to do is, answer the phone or call the number, or, whatever type of marketing they're doing that's unethical. You get to the end of it, who it is. It's not like it's hard to find out who's behind the marketing. Someone just commented on a company name, which I think is funny. But anyways, the question is, how do they get away with it? Here's CMS. They're talking about more company names. This is fun. They're talking, CMS comes out with this strong statement before AEP talking about how they want to regulate marketing more. And then here we are in the middle of, or at least at the start of AEP, and it's already happening. And it's like, well, what are they going to do? And this is that's why kind of my take when that notice first came out, I didn't really think much about it, because that's kind of like standard practice for a CMS is it's like, hey, don't do this. These are the guidelines. You guys should know what the guidelines are. So it really kind of like what you said, it was more of the same. So, I'm curious to see, is CMS going to stick to their guns, and are they actually going to start enforcing some of these regulations? And if they are, I'm assuming someone big, like the companies that keep getting mentioned, I'm assuming they're going to get fined, or they're going to get, contracts terminated, some type of repercussions. The problem with fines, which Justin Brock mentioned, is you fine a giant company $50,000 or $100,000. on their bottom line, that's nothing. I mean,
it's a speeding ticket.
Yeah, you're talking about like an hour's worth of revenue or like an hour's worth of gross profit. Like that's not really a penalty to them. So
Right.
I don't know. It feels like they're kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place where they want the beneficiaries to be taken care of.
Right.
The government can't directly take care of the Medicare beneficiaries. They have to have the brokerages, the agents, the call centers. Like whether you hate insurance call centers or you love them, they're a necessary evil at this point to service the tens of millions of Medicare beneficiaries in the marketplace. So
Right.
yeah,
Right.
I don't know. I don't know what's going to come from. I'm kind of excitedly watching because I'm curious to see what's going to happen.
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, like, before we were late, I was late.
You were late. Thank you. Yeah.
And,
normally it's me. Normally it's me. It was Christian today.
but I was late because I got a call from someone, came into the office Saturday, sat down with me, husband and wife, very nice. And they signed up for plans on Saturday. And they're brand new clients, and they call me up and they're just like, we just saw this commercial today. And they're like, and it says we can get $150 a month back into our Social Security check. And they're like, is there a plan out there that maybe you didn't tell us about? Like that was basically like the consensus of the call. And so
Right.
I was late because I was like, I went into my whole, save it mode.
Right.
But that was today. That tells me the commercials are not stopping.
No.
They're continuing to run. They're just like, oh, CMS told us to do something that they're just like.
Right. Well, that's
basically what they're doing.
I don't know. And I think part of it for me too is like, I feel like if CMS if they were taking it in a more serious manner, they would have made this announcement in September.
Right.
I don't feel like it was serious. If you're going to make this announcement a week before AEP, it almost seemed like Santa Claus is watching to see who's on their nice or naughty list. Like,
right.
I feel like if you were really cracking down, September 1st, you put this statement out, and then you also have like a list of penalties. Instead, it's like this ambiguous letter where it's like, hey, these are the things you shouldn't do. And like, there's nothing about like what's going to happen either,
You're right. I mean, it was very strange to me. The letter in general was very strange to me, but, I mean, I feel like, I watched a video today. I was driving home today and Justin Brock, speaking to him, he gets a lot of free mentions on our show. We need to be more mindful of that. But
he should sponsor Taco Tuesday.
Yeah, probably should. But anyway, he put a video out that I thought was very interesting about Facebook ads, and I actually agree with a lot of what he said about how the profitability of them is just not what it was. And it's
right.
just dramatically the costs are going up. And he said something interesting in the video. He said the ads in the video are essentially with the new Medicare requirements or the new the new regulations that's been put out. They're not compliant because what are the chances that all of these ads are getting approved by CMS before they're being ran? Probably not.
Zero.
And so I think we're still seeing a lot of that. To me, that's been the most interesting development so far in AEP. Other than that, it's been a pretty normal AEP, all things considered. Plans change, plans exit markets, plans enter markets, things like that. They increase benefits, decrease, all that stuff. That's a normal with AEP. But I feel like I don't remember a time where CMS made a statement like that right in the middle of AEP towards advertising and is just basically blatantly ignored.
Well, one thing because leading up to this conversation today, I was kind of thinking on my end, what's changed or what am I seeing on the marketing side of the business and talking with agencies. And it seems like kind of across the board marketing, it's slowly getting harder. The attrition rate is growing across all verticals of marketing.
Right.
You're using the phone, you're dropping mail, Facebook ads, Google. I feel like in general, I don't know if that's just a dilution in the marketplace because more and more companies are getting involved in Medicare every year. I don't know, part of me feels like the consumer is getting smarter. I like my mom. I've talked about my mom previously on the show because she's coming up into Medicare age. And I think she's a very educated consumer, and she's not going to go on Medicare for 2 or 3 years. And she already knows like everything. She knows again, I'm very involved in the Medicare space, and I had never talked to her about it. And it came up the other day, and there's a chance she listened to Christian's podcast. I haven't verified that yet, the Everything Medicare podcast, but she said she listened to multiple podcasts. She did, some of her own internet search. And without even talking to an insurance agent yet, she already knew that she wanted to go on a Plan G. She already knew she wanted to go on a Medicare Supplement Plan G. And so I think that could be part of it too, where I think previously a lot of these Medicare beneficiaries were almost waiting to be helped. And it kind of seems like maybe the internet and technology is educating the consumer more. And now the consumers they're not waiting. I don't know. That was just kind of something I was toying with today when I was thinking about this topic.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, I believe that one thing that's interesting is I believe that it's going to be harder and harder as time goes. And I'd love to get your opinion on this as somebody that is heavily involved in marketing and lead generation. I believe it's probably going to be more difficult, and I think telemarketing with what Lead Heroes does is unique from a perspective because there is a human point of contact.
Right.
There's a legitimate connection made. It's not on the other side of a landing page or sending a reply card back in or something like that. There's more of a connection there, even if it's just a short call. But so I don't know how this really falls into really telemarketing. It might not at all because I think it's pretty unique. But I think lead generation in general with Facebook ads, internet leads, and when I say lead generation, I mean not running your own leads. I mean buying from some of these vendors, right? And maybe internet lead vendors that are still around. There's not a whole lot of them left, but Facebook ad vendors, direct mail, where it's a very generic marketing to where it's, they don't know what they're signing up for. They don't know who they're signing up to work with. And there's no brand behind it for the agent or anything like that. I feel like as time goes on, and I think we're already starting to see this, but I think it's going to get more and more difficult to build a book of business that way without having some kind of branded advertising,
let's talk about the golden years. Okay. Let's talk about 2008 to 2012 when internet marketing was at its peak, where you could buy a shared internet lead, you guys, for $5 to $10. You could convert maybe 10% of those. You had this huge, acquisition rate that you could only dream of today,
Right.
And here we are, 10 years later, and that world doesn't really exist anymore. And just to Christian's point, you didn't know when a consumer went to a generic internet form and they would fill this out and it, something really basic, and they don't know who they're working with, what company they're working with. That does seem, in my opinion, I think that is getting less and less popular. I think people want to know who they're going to be working with, and I do think branding's a big part of it. I think there's a chance that we see maybe kind of a pivot back to the local agent. I think it could end up being an advantage to be local again, whereas it kind of went the opposite direction when I was talking about kind of the golden years, the peak of internet marketing. Not that internet marketing is going away, not that anyone should stop internet marketing, but when you look at how internet marketing functions today versus how internet marketing functioned 10 years ago, it's a night and day difference.
Right.
You could literally go to All Web Leads or Quote Wizard,
NetQuote.
Yeah, NetQuote, most of which of these companies are either gone or they got bought, whatever. And you could literally buy a lead for $5 or $10 and it was semi-quality. Like you could actually call on it and convert it. And that type of lead doesn't really exist anymore, not nearly to what it was before. So
right.
I think branding will be a big part of it. I know that's kind of an echo statement for a lot of other people talking in this space about branding. But I totally agree. I think it plays into that educated consumer that I just talked about. The consumer is going to want to know, who am I working with? What carriers does this agency or agent work with? Are they really showing me all of my options? Just like you just mentioned, your beneficiary that reached out to you. Christian, did you not mention this plan to me? Why are they doing that? Well, because they're smart. They're looking at these ads or they're being shown these ads and they want to make sure they're knowing all their options.
Right. Absolutely. I mean, one thing that I wanted to ask you that I thought was interesting is, I was before we got on today, I was reflecting to kind of some of the episodes we did last AEP. And I know one thing that I recall that was kind of a theme last AEP was like on the telemarketing side, pickup rates might not have been as high as normal. And mainly a lot because of the election. There was a lot going on back, last year.
2020.
Yeah.
2020.
How are you guys seeing that trend this AEP? Like, how are pickup rates going? Are people picking up? Or like, do you still see that trend going towards that direction? Or did it kind of swing the other way this year?
Definitely was a concern for me coming into AEP. We bulked up on data sources coming in. We have got like 6 different data sets that we can work with to try to maximize pickup rate. I'd say there has been a slight decline, but I would say that 2020 was worse. I do have a few theories for why that was too. I do think the election was a big part of it. There's a lot of marketing for the election going on, including phone calls, robocalls. Political phone calls are allowed to robocall, which, that's a whole nother conversation for another day, but they're literally allowed to do what we aren't allowed to do. Right. So without a doubt, that had an impact. There's not even a question in my mind that was, and like direct mail. I talked to people last year and they had some really bad response rates. And I think, again, the election, they're dropping mail for, the candidates, whether it's state or local or federal, whatever. There's elections that were happening everywhere. So I couldn't be happier that there's no elections going on right now, at least no major elections. I do think that there's more face-to-face business probably being conducted this year than last year, since we have kind of progressed to where we're at with the pandemic. So I think even though there is probably a record number of phone calls happening for Medicare right now, I don't think it necessarily compares to last year. So slight decline. I'd say maybe 30% of the decline compared to last year. So not that we're seeing a 30% decline in pickup rate. It's probably more like we're seeing a 10% decline in pickup rate, whereas last year it was like a 30% decline. So it's not nearly the sort of drop that we had last year, which I'm really happy about.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting because, it's interesting, because there's trends that we see take place. I mean, I remember for internet leads, like 2014, we were buying NetQuote leads. And I was spending probably $8 to $10 a lead. And they were probably they would tell us that they were shared with 4 to 5 agents. In reality, I think they were really shared with 30 to 50 agents. Because I would talk, I'd get some of these people on the phone because I'd usually be the first one. Because when I turn the leads on, I'd be
right
on it. And, but then I'd talk to the person later and they'd be like, I must have got 35, 40 phone calls after you called.
That's insane.
But that was a big market. And I don't know if any of those companies are still around anymore. I know Next Gen Leads is still around, but I don't know they're doing.
But it seems like all these companies shifted to selling calls instead of selling. It's like the idea of just selling leads has kind of disappeared. It's like everything's on the phone now.
Right.
Which, again, that could kind of be part of the contribution to why the people are just consistently answering their phone less. But again, it circles back to branding, right? Like if someone's expecting your phone call, or, they were on your website when they filled out a form, not some generic website, that I think that just makes them that much more likely to answer their phone and potentially convert. The other thing that I think is worth noting, and we talked about this before today's episode, is we talked about how, I don't think either of us really realized it until we talked to Bobby. Shout out to Bobby Beish. I don't think we realized Medicare Bob. I don't think we realized exactly how much third-party marketing was going on. But I think we realize now there's probably 90% of marketing is being done by third parties. It's being outsourced, affiliate partners, etc. So I think it offers a huge advantage to people who can have an internal marketing team I think it's going to put you that much ahead of your competition, because again, the better you can align your marketing team and your sales, the better you're going to convert, the happier your clients will be. I think your retention is going to be higher. Like I would bet my company on all of these things, because when we do marketing, and there's a lot of lazy agents and agency owners out there where they don't take even the time to read our scripting. So if we're generating the lead or we're handing that phone call off and they just say, "Hi, Mrs. Jones, you want a quote for life insurance?" And then everyone hangs up and they're like, "Glenn, why is everyone hanging up on me?" It's like, "Well, what did you say?" They're like, "Well, I said, hey, do you want a quote for life insurance?" I'm like, "Well, in our final expense script, we talk about final expense. We talk about burial costs. We talk about many different things, but we don't talk about quotes for life insurance." So,
Right.
That same idea, I think it offers a huge leg up if you can have an internal marketing process and you can have that really line up with your sales team. I think that's going to give you a big advantage going into the next several years.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree more. I mean, it's interesting because for us this year, we buy a lot of leads every year through different sources, right? We buy leads from you guys, of course. We buy leads. So sometimes we'll buy leads from, social media vendors just as fillers, like when things
Right.
are slow, we'll do direct mail. I think, not including the Lead Hero leads, because I haven't seen this with the Lead Hero leads, but with direct mail and the Facebook leads we bought from vendors, both of them dramatically underperformed what we're used to. Dramatically.
Right.
We were talking about this morning, an
Yep.
agent with us got a 0.6% response rate in a direct mail, and it's a big order.
Oh.
I did a pretty big order in Utah. Now we do some branded direct mail too, but we also did some generic. We try to mix it up. We did some generic direct mail as well, and it was like a 0.8% response rate, which that's in Utah.
Right.
It's not like in one of these big metropolitan areas. That's in Utah. And I did well with that 0.8% response rate, but I was expecting more. I was expecting like 1, maybe 1.5, something like that. But I didn't get that. And
Right.
I feel like, and I'll share something with the audience that I don't know if I should, but I will. We'll probably do less business this AEP than we did last year because of what I just said.
Because your mail response rates didn't come back as high?
Not mail, but just most of the leads we bought dramatically underperformed. So when we bought leads from Facebook vendors,
right,
we're not seeing the volume come in on a consistent basis. Like we order 200, 300, 400 leads, and we'll see like one a day come in. something like that. Now we're still doing well with our branding. We're still doing well with our
Right.
organic advertising, our own direct mail. We're getting lots of referrals, so we're still doing well. But I don't think we'll write as much business as we did last year internally as an office. So like for me, that was a big eye opener, because I'm like, okay, I think we just need to scrap buying leads that are direct mail, Facebook, all that stuff. Like just screw it,
Yeah, I think a lot of that plays into the saturation. I mean, I wish I could know. I'm sure there's estimates that I could grab somewhere online, but it would be amazing to know like the actual dollar amount that's being dropped into marketing every year into AEP, because I'm sure if we had it on a graph, it would just look like a hockey stick, especially when you look at, you look at all of the money that's coming into this space. You look at the hedge funds that are buying books of business, that are buying uplines, companies like Integrity Marketing, AmeriLife, I'm sure they have more money than ever that they are spending in the space.
Right.
So that saturation has to affect everybody to some degree. And I'm sure there's a lot of variables, the area, the type of marketing. One thing that I think is interesting, and I had a long conversation with a client about last week, is Medicare Supplement, because I think it's a better time than ever. And some people might argue this with me, but I think it's a better time than it's ever been to be selling Medicare supplements, because everyone's going Advantage.
Right.
Everyone's going Advantage. All the call centers that I've done business with that use it's almost done a complete reversal over the past 10 years. Mm-hmm. It used to be, oh, we're not touching Advantage. There's too much compliance. There's too much regulation. It screws up. Our clients get upset that we've sold Advantage plans to, because they end up paying a lot more out of pocket. And so all of these agents and call centers were selling Medicare supplements almost exclusively. Mm-hmm. And now here we are almost 10 years later, and now it's done a complete reversal, and almost nobody's selling supplements. Everyone talks trash about supplements. Everyone's talking about how Advantage is taking over. And even if all of that stuff is true, statistically, it's been a small move every year. It's like 1% towards Advantage every year. So this idea that supplements are just disappearing overnight is such a fallacy. It's hilarious to me. You guys are so freaking lazy about doing simplified issue underwriting that you're going to pretend that an entire category of insurance is disappearing overnight. And it's not. It's not even close. It's 7 to 10 health questions. It's a freaking joke.
Yeah.
So I'm super bullish about Medicare Supplement. I think selling med subs is a huge opportunity going into 2022. I really do.
I think so many agents look at it from the perspective of, with the Medicare Advantage, right, there's no health questions now. Used to be the end-stage renal disease question. Now there's none. A lot of them are $0 premium. And even in rural markets now, you're seeing so many $0 premiums. It's like you're order taking at that point, right? So like it's very easy for agents to get into the space and sell Medicare Advantage, because imagine selling a product where you don't have to get bank information. Like that's what it's come down to.
100%. 100%.
And so, I agree with you completely, though. I think, people are sleeping on med sup, and
huge.
I don't think it's the pendulum's swinging so dramatically like some people say it is. You have certain people on YouTube that wear glasses that say that it's going the other way. It's going away from Medicare Advantage. I don't agree with that.
Right.
Like I'm like, you can't just say things, I'm like, it doesn't make it true. You can say whatever you want. It doesn't make it true. But but it's such a, growth in Medicare supplements has grown in terms of the numbers, as well as Medicare Advantage. It's just because there's so many people that are coming into the program, into the Medicare program, and that's just more and more people turning 65 all the time. And so you're seeing Medicare Supplement grow as well as Medicare Advantage. But but it's such a small change each year, like you said. People are funny. People are silly.
The boomers have all the money, you guys. Like, statistically, the majority of these baby boomers are making more money than any of us. And so, the people who have money, typically, obviously it's unique to every person. I'm making some generalizations here, but typically the people who have more money are happy to pay that MedSup premium and not have to worry about any out-of-pocket costs. They're not worried about, when am I going to hit my max deductible? They're not worried about co-pays. They just pay their premium and that's it. Mm-hmm. So I do think the opposite way, though, is funny to say too. And I think I know who you're talking about. And I think there's many agents, actually. There's many agents who will go the other direction still, right? And they'll say Medicare Advantage is, that's Satan's plan. We're not doing Medicare. And that's not true either. But, if you look at the national statistics over like the past 10 years, it's been like a 1% swing towards Advantage. That's typically what I've seen. So it's like, I think it was like 60-40 and now it's 59-41. And it's that slow swing.
Slightly,
Yeah. And maybe it will get to a point where Medicare Advantage is 80%. But even then, 20% of 100 million Medicare beneficiaries is still going to be tens of millions of supplement holders.
Right.
There's no reason to completely ignore it. It doesn't make sense.
I mean, it's one of those things where, like, people are so short-sighted. Like, it certainly won't be an overnight thing if it does happen that way.
Right.
It won't. It'll be a gradual thing, slowly but surely. One thing that I was kind of curious to get your perspective on is last year we did a lot of talks about agents in booths during AEP. I've seen some of the things.
Did you see the picture? Did you see the picture that got posted yesterday, I think?
No, I don't think so. Where was it posted?
I think it was in Medicare Gurus. To describe this to our viewers, it was a Walmart booth, I think. And I feel bad. I feel bad that I'm even laughing. I feel bad for but to describe this situation, you guys, the booth is up against a wall. And it looks like Walmart, all of like the return cart items have been piled up like around this booth to the point where like the agent can't even get to their own booth. And it's like, it's like the booth was banished to the outer realms of this Walmart. It's just like, I'm all about it, you guys. I'm all about, you're talking to someone who did door-to-door sales for years. I'm all about, feet on the pavement, shaking hands, getting deals done. But I think banking on a Walmart table or a grocery store table or a CVS table and thinking that you're going to hit your AEP goals by just sitting at this table and having people walk up to you and saying, please help me. I think that's typically going to be a recipe for failure. And let me phrase this another way. How many times, I just want to phrase this another way. Okay. How many times do you see an agent post about how successful their booth is versus how many times do you hear people post about the failure that their booth is? Because I'd say it's probably a 9.5 to 1 ratio.
Yeah, right? You read my mind. That's exactly the number that came into my mind. I was like, probably 9 to 1.
It's 9 to 1. It's got to be 9 to 1. So, maybe there's these magical locations where it can happen, where you get a ton of foot traffic, you crush out 20, 30 apps a day, and it's worth all of your time and money to be completely invested. But it seems like 9 out of 10 times it goes the other way. Right. I'm 2 weeks into AEP. I've got 5 applications. Nobody's talking to me. What do I do? That's right. Typically what happens.
Like, I think I think one of the things that's interesting about it to me was, I think if you had to pick a booth to be in, if you had to pick a store to be in, it'd probably be Walmart. Out of all the stores, and maybe there's some exceptions to that in certain geographical places, but I think the places that really are just like, they'll put you out of business if you camp there and the whole of AEP is like Walgreens, CVS, and I could be wrong. Maybe there's some locations that are just freaking gangster. I don't know, but like, but I've been in CVS's before as a younger agent. I've been in a Walgreens before. For me, like most days it was me and the staff restocking, and there was like one person in the store, and they were like a kid.
You're like, do you need help restocking? I'm not doing anything anyway.
Yeah. Look, what I had to do, the last booth I ever did, and like what a lot of people don't realize is when you do those booths, for the most part, it's like you're registering an event. You're setting a schedule, and you have to stick to that schedule, and you really can't get out of it unless you can convince some other schmuck to take your spot.
Yeah.
Like they send secret shoppers to make sure you're there. It happened to an agent that works with us. Like he wasn't there. He like took off, he got bored and went somewhere else, and the secret shoppers showed up and he wasn't there, and he had to take a training class about compliance or something like.
Oh gosh. Oh my gosh, that's amazing.
My first AEP, they put me in a Kroger store called Smith. It's Smith's in Utah, but it's owned by Kroger.
Yeah.
They put us in the back near next to the condoms. Like, I've gotten apps from these booths, but I've never gotten like a crazy amount.
Right.
Like I've never what I did my last time I ever did a booth, and then I told myself I'm never doing a booth again. I'm like, this is crap. I've tried this like 3-4 times, and every time it's the same thing. I'm just like, staring at my hand, and people are like, well, stand up, greet people. I'm like, what people?
Yeah.
There's no one there. Like there's no one to greet. But anyway, like what I did that helped me the most in the last booth I was in is like I used all that downtime to call leads, and that was way more effective, than staying off my phone. Like I made way more points of contact. I sold some apps in the booth, but it was like minuscule compared to what I could have done if I just sat my butt in my office and called people over the phone.
Yep. Hang on 1 second. 1 second. My wife needed the car keys. I had them.
I was dancing for the audience.
Oh, good. I didn't want
to see my dice roll.
Well, I'm trying to think because the booth conversation, we talked about that so much. I'm curious. I'm trying to think what else we talked about like during last year. One thing that I saw come up recently too is putting all their marketing eggs in one basket, right?
Yeah. I saw a post today about that.
So that's one of those like classic. It's one of those like classic things that we've talked about so many times. And again, I tell everybody, I'm like, diversify your marketing. I don't care if you love Lead Heroes. You should not bank on us 100%. Any company that's worth their salt markets in a bunch of different ways to capture different audiences, to be strategic because, again, you don't know maybe what a closing rate's going to look like or what your response rate's going to look like when you drop mail, etc. So that's another one that I feel like I've seen come up a couple times already this AEP as well.
Yeah, like it's interesting because I mentioned a second ago, we will probably do less business than we did last year, but we're not going to do like 4 or 5 or something we're not going to do 0, and it's because we're diversified. We're still going to do we're still going to do well. We're still going to do a lot of business, but sometimes what happens is when you put your money into a source and it doesn't work like you're expecting it. It happens all the time. There's things that have trends where it works for a little while and then it stops working. So like I remember probably like 2016, I want to say. We were buying leads from Health Plan One, the call center, because I don't think they do it anymore, but they were selling leads, exclusive internet leads that they would generate, and they would charge like 25 bucks a lead, and they were exclusive leads, and they were good quality. We used them for a long time. I was still pretty new though, so I wasn't spending tons of money with them, but I was putting in what I could. That AEP, I think I put $5,000 in an account with them, and the way it worked is it was like a bidding system. So you would bid against other agents and agencies in the area, right? And then you put the money into the account. Once the lead comes through, they take that money out of your account, and it just kind of works as like an account where they take it out as it goes. Well, that year I put $5,000 in an account with them, and at the time that was a lot for me to spend as an agent. Like now, it's not a big deal at all. But like back then, if spending $5,000 was a big deal to me on leads. And what happened was, they had worked for a couple of years that pretty well for us, on and off when we used it. And what happened is basically like overnight, the leads that they had available for us dried up. They just weren't available.
Right.
And so like we would keep the leads on all the time, constantly, and we would probably see like one or two come in a week, and that was it. And I was like, crap, what am I gonna do? Because and then we went to him. I was like, hey, I need my money back. I need to put it in something else quickly. And it took them 2-3 weeks to get the refund back to us. Like it was, that's what happens when you do all in one thing. Is like it could work beautifully. It could work fantastic. It could work fantastic for a long time, and then just boom.
Yep.
Market changes, trends change.
Yeah,
I think volume, whatever.
The word that I think that comes to mind is redundancy, right? Like I can't tell you how many times. So I'll share a story that happened to us at Lead Heroes, and I talked to you a bit about this, Christian, where we have multiple merchant processors. So if we're charging someone's credit card, we have multiple companies that we work with that handle the credit card transactions for us. Mm-hmm. And we had someone that attempted fraud on us by doing a bunch of fake transactions with one of our merchant processing accounts. And it essentially shut down that whole account. And if that was the only merchant account that we had, then we would have not been able to run anybody's card until it got resolved. Yeah. But we had redundancy in place. We had multiple merchant processing accounts, so there was no downtime, and then we're able to get this resolved, and now we're able to run cards with multiple companies. So I think redundancy is like, if you really want to have longevity with your business, whatever business you're in, and marketing is obviously the specifics that we're talking about right now. But by having that redundancy, having a plan A, B, C, D, if your booth doesn't work out, that's okay, because I can have Joe Schmo take my booth and I'm going to go, work these direct mail leads. If my direct mail leads don't work out, I've got some call verified leads I can work. I've got internet leads. I've got referral systems. Maybe it's an ABC. Maybe you're running a lot of these concurrently, right? So that way it's kind of all happening at once, and then you can kind of pick the winners. I think there's a lot of different ways to do it, but having redundancy in place, I think is just a huge, huge important factor to being successful.
Yeah, 100%. Someone said everything works a little, nothing works a lot. That's right. That's 100% right. Spoken by a wise man.
Don't say his name.
He's getting too much free publicity from this. So. But no, it's the truth, and nothing works forever either.
Right. Who moved my cheese?
Yeah, exactly. I think it's market trends, the industry changes and things like that, and you have to change with it. And if you don't, you'll ultimately be me during that AEP with, $5,000 stuck in a lead account with no lead. you know, which, you know, the ending to that story was, you know, we were able to get a refund. I took $1,000. I was like I had like a couple $1,000s in another savings account, but like, you know, it didn't have the funds that I have today. And I quickly dropped it with another vendor that, you know, we were pretty close with for a while, and they saved our AEP, they saved our bacon, you know, because we just needed some leads, we needed something to do, you know, and but yeah, I think, you know, that what's happening this AEP is reminding me of that AEP, because, you know, the vendors leads that we bought are slow, they're not giving us the volume we were expecting. Ultimately, that's inconvenient, but our boat's not sinking either, because we're diversified, we're set up, we have a lot of things we do on our own without lead companies now, which is helpful because we have control over that. We have, you know, obviously relationships with you and Lead Heroes is helpful because we, you know, we can do orders with you guys, and so like there's so many different things that we can do that I think is helpful now. It just doesn't sink our boat. But like, I mean, I feel for people that maybe did, you know, gone heavy direct mail this AEP. I'm like, can't been working out very well in most places. I mean, you can get business. Like, even if you get a low return, you can still write business, but you're not, if you're banking on that to get you to 100 apps, that's a lot of direct mail.
Yeah. You're talking over 1,000 pieces coming back to you, you know? And if you're getting a 1% response rate and you need 1,000 pieces, then you've got to be dropping 100,000 pieces of mail. I mean, that's crazy. And the cost on that's insane. The cost. Yeah. I mean, but you know, here's one thing, you know, I know we're getting towards the hour here, but another thing that trends this AEP that I've been looking at on my end, and this applies, I think, to direct mail. So if you drop 10,000 pieces of mail in Utah versus 100,000 pieces of mail in Utah, what would be your guess on the return percentage between those two drops?
Well, I think I think the 100,000 pieces would have a higher return rate than the 10,000.
That would be my guess too. Shout out to Chris Weir. I'm not dropping mail anymore, thank the Lord. But what I can say on our end at Lead Heroes is I had a couple of complaints come up with response, right? Like a couple of agents that weren't getting the response rate that they had hoped with the calls that we were making. And so I really dove into not only their campaign, but I wanted to kind of get a comparison of other campaigns that were running that were very similar. And the response rate on the larger campaigns where we had more callers had a significantly higher response rate. And I think it just comes back to that law of large numbers, where if I have one campaign that makes 7,000, like this was the comparison I was looking at. Okay. One campaign with 7,000 calls versus another campaign with 70,000 calls. And the response rate with the 70,000 call campaign was not quite double. It was probably like 1.75. So it wasn't double, but it was close to double the 7,000 call rate. And most other factors were relatively the same between these campaigns. It's not perfect. We're using humans to make these phone calls. So, you know, you could argue that there could be a discrepancy in talent, et cetera. But for the most part, these campaigns were almost identical. And so to me, it comes back to that law of large numbers. And I 100% believe direct mail works the same way. I think the bigger you bet, the bigger your response rate's most likely going to be, which ultimately should lead to that many more sales. Yeah,
100%. I couldn't agree more with you on that. And I think, you know, at the end of the day, I think some people, and I hope this doesn't happen, but I'm sure there will be some agents that watch this or listen to this or watch the replay, and it will discourage them from spending money in their business or advertising or marketing. that's not my message. My message is understand that when something stops working, that it's okay to pivot. You don't have to keep smashing your head into the wall, expecting it to work. And that's really my message. But you can't build a business without advertising, marketing, spending money on your business. Certainly there's people that build up, good books of businesses. Maybe they build up a 500, 600, 700 clientele book of business just through word of mouth, just through grassroots marketing, all that stuff. But I do believe there's a limit to what you can do with that. If you're not spending money on your business, if you're not advertising, I think, it's all relative and it's necessary.
I love it. Let's, I think this is a good time to kind of jump to some final thoughts.
Yeah.
I'll go first. I'll kind of share my final thoughts on today's episode and kind of where I think AEP's at in the Medicare space and, the future of Medicare. Again, I appreciate all of you guys listening here on Taco Tuesday. We're hoping to get this to a more regular schedule. Again, we know we've been off the past month, just about kind of prepping for AEP and executing on the start of AEP. But some final thoughts, the way this conversation went, a couple highlights. I think one is being strategic with your money. I think it's easy to just be like, I have 10 grand to spend on marketing. I'm going to just spend 10 grand with this one company. I think it's smarter to diversify. I think branding is important, so if previously you've had zero branding, which it shocks me, but sometimes I talk to agents, they don't have a website. They don't have business cards. They have essentially their LLC paperwork, and that's it. Some agents don't even have LLC paperwork. They're literally just 1099 selling on their own, and that's fine. But a little bit of branding can go a long ways, you guys.
Yeah.
It really can. So I think just and be prepared for the things that normally work to not work as well anymore, or for things to change. Get ready to have to pivot. I mean, again, it's a lot of this I feel like is kind of business 101, redundancy, being ready to pivot, diversifying your marketing. It really doesn't matter what business you're in. These are principles that are going to apply. But I hope you guys, and here's really the final piece I'll leave with you guys that I saw someone comment on Facebook today. Someone was talking about how bad their start to AEP was. And the comment that someone made was, it's not over yet. And I've never had the first 10 days of AEP make or break me. So, even if you've had the worst start to AEP that you've ever had, even if you're sitting at less than 5 apps on the AEP so far, it's not over. It's not over. There's plenty of time to course correct here. Make the best of your situation, whether it's, good, bad, or ugly.
Yep. I love it. And well said, 100%. My final thoughts, I'll somewhat piggyback on what you said on there. Yeah. I think I would say, guys, don't give up. If AEP if it hasn't started the way you wanted it to start, I was talking to someone the other day and they're like, well, AEP really starts October 1st. I'm like, well, but I'm like, let's just be technical. I'm like, you can't take apps till the 15th. So obviously you weren't enrolling people before the 15th. So I'm like, let's just say it started the 15th. Like, you're 11 days in. You're not even 2 weeks in. So, you still have, I don't know, maybe 5 more weeks to go, 5.5, almost 6 weeks to go. There's plenty of time left.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean be lazy. That doesn't mean be like, oh, I'll start tomorrow. I hate that mentality, right? It's poison. Make sure that you're understanding, though, that there is time. And, there's still time to put together some last-minute marketing stuff, too, if you really need to. Like, with what we experienced, our drop-off. What did I do? I called you, and I was like, hey, we need some more leads. Could you put us in, and maybe whoever you're working with can, or maybe they can't, or, however you're doing things, but it doesn't mean that you can't figure some things out, and, you just don't quit on your AEP before November even this year. there's a long way to go. It's a marathon, not a race. And keep your heads up, guys. You can still have a really good AEP. It's not all October.
I love it. I love it. Don't give up. Don't give up. Do or do not.
Do or do not.
Try, or I bought the Yoda.
No try.
Try or try not. Do or do not. There is no try. Master Yoda, some final words. Thanks everybody for watching. If you're listening on YouTube, please hit the subscribe. If you're watching or listening to this on anywhere where you can find a podcast, iTunes, Spotify, again, please drop us a review. Let us know what you think. Until next Tuesday, you guys, happy selling. Have a great AEP.
All right. See you guys.